Welcome back to the Spewak Training Podcast. This is episode 5 with a legend of Spewak Training, Carlos Briseño. Overall, an amazing guy. You're going to love this interview. We go through the 10 years of working together. He's been through it, the thick and thin of Spewak Training and our personal relationship. It's just been amazing to see him prosper, and I think you're going to be really inspired by his journey and what he's up to currently. So let's dive in. Welcome back to the 5th episode of the Spewak Training Podcast. I feel like we snubbed Carlos putting him number 5, although number 5 is a special number because that would be after Albert Pujols, right? One of the greatest St. Louis Cardinals outside of Stan the Man. So this is our way of paying it forward. But this is going to be a super fun interview because Carlos and I have been working together for almost 10 years on the dot. He started with us in July of 2016, which is just nuts to think about at this point. And so we've obviously made it to February together and excited to dive into just the last 10 years and some of the highlights and then the future of what's ahead for him. So Carlos, it's good to see you, man.
Hey man, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. This is my podcast debut, so I'm excited, I'll be the first one. Like I said, it's been 10 years. It's been a lot of fun. We've gone through thick and thin. So I'm glad that we have an opportunity to talk about this and share a relationship with the podcasting world.
Yeah, I think people are going to be super inspired just by your journey because you've had a lot of success and then you've had setbacks like anybody has in 10 years of life. But it's really been how you've handled every one of them. You've handled it with such grace and with your work ethic and just the tenacity that you bring to everything. Whether that's on the running, course or it's the basketball court, which I've seen your enthusiasm playing it. So it's been amazing. But I'm just, I'm thinking back to our first meeting ever together at the Forest Park Visitor Center and just what your expectations were when you reached out. I know that in your first initial email, you reached out because you had seen our website, and you'd seen just the camaraderie of the group. And I know you had, obviously had a friend who had referred you and, heard good things. But take me back to kind of the beginning of reaching out to myself and Spewak Training and, how that looks, differently to today.
No, totally. And so a little history there. I started running when I moved to St. Louis. I did my first half, which was Go in 2012. Got the bug, started running pretty seriously, and then kept getting a couple PRs here and there. But I hit the wall in the halves, where I improved to a 140, and then that was the as far as I was going to go. Started running a couple of marathons, and same thing, Chicago was the first one and hurt like no other. Second one was Seattle, went really well. St. Louis was the third marathon, and same thing. I could feel the improvements. I could feel to take to the next level, I needed a coach. So then did a Google search, coaches in St. Louis, not really knowing what I was going to get into. And interestingly enough, Spewak was the first hit. I was like, cool. Who's this guy? Like I said, I asked a friend, hey, do you know Mark? He's like, yeah, I know Mark. He's a great kid. You should call him. It's like, okay, cool. And that's when I reached out, and the expectation really was, can I get a little more structure? What else can I do in running to help me reach the goal, which at the time was run a sub-90 half. My dad, I grew up watching my dad race, and that was, his PR was around the 130, so being the son that wants to be his dad, I was like, all right, cool. I need a coach to get there, and so that was the expectation. I really didn't know what I was going to get into, and I really didn't have any idea what running training would look like, just because I never ran with a team. I never ran cross country growing up. I never ran track, it was just mostly, I would just go out and run my easy runs and just be done with it. So, part of the expectation was, 1, can I join a team? 2, can I have a coach tell me what to do and help me with just getting faster and learn more about the sport? And then that first visit, it was really funny. It was I was nervous too. It was well, I'm meeting this coach, I don't know what the hell is what's going to happen. I got there a little bit early, and then I see you come in, and I still remember it was blue polo, shorts, this leather binder, I keep reference to. You could you show up, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? And one of the things I really loved, we immediately kicked it off. It was the chemistry was there from day one, and that's really appreciated. And it was easy to sign up with it, just because I knew you were passionate with the sport, and I knew it was going to be in good hands.
And that's so fun to think about because when we started together, that's in the first year of me starting my coaching business and doing the private coaching. And I can say to this day, I'm as excited coaching you as I was then. But I just think about the enthusiasm and just the newness of it all.
Right.
And then to have somebody that believes in you, and then to continue to believe in you, obviously 10 years later is just like, it's such an incredible thing. And I'm so grateful for that. Obviously your expectations with coaching have probably changed as the years have gone on and things have adjusted in that sense. But it is just amazing to kind of see, okay, here's where you started. This is what you wanted out of coaching and the sport, and you're continuing going with it, which is amazing. Yeah. When we first started together, you were on that quest for Sub-90, which as we can put out to the world so people understand, the Sub-90, the 129, 59 half marathon, I think is like roughly like 650 or 649 pace, right. Somewhere there. And at that time, like we had a core group of people like Jason Hyatt, Tim Basler, Sonny Ta, just some of these folks that are in the group that were all kind of eyeing that Sub-90 at that time. And so that we had that, that competitive push when you joined us, you kind of joined at like a really good time where everybody was kind of hungry for that barrier. And we did a few races to start off with, if I remember correctly, like, it was a little bit of a journey to get there. And I remember, and you might not remember this, I think you probably would, but like even just like getting together to talk about strategy before things like we did Illinois one year, and like just the strategy behind how you were going to perform there that day, and like what you were going to attack, and like Cowbell, and do you kind of remember just the quest of before leading up to obviously eventually your big PR? Do you remember the process of that?
No, I did. I think I remember the first cycle really well. That was the one where we did the St. Louis Track Club, which is the first half I did with you. I ran a cycle because in it was actually running the Halloween 5K, which you ended up winning, I think. And that was the day that they rerouted it. I was wearing the box for like 20 minutes. And so I ended up hitting the sub-20 for the first time in that race. And that was really exciting, and it was really cool to see how quickly it was progressing and just having you as a coach, because we go a little back, like a month into being on a team, you had me do the Rooster 5K, and that was a 21 something that was miserable. And like, I ended up like throwing up after the race, but if you think about it, like 2 or 3 months later, I was running sub-20, that's a 2-minute PR in 3 months, which is absolutely phenomenal. And so then I remember like this guy knows what he's doing, and then now that I've been in the training, like I'm starting to see the return really quickly. And I remember when I finished the St. Louis Track Club path, you even looked up at me like, why are you here? Like, why are you running so fast? I was like, no, like we're in a good spot, like we're improving. That day was what, a 10-minute PR. And I remember like, all right, cool. Like we're on to something. Let's go. I think I forget exactly what the next race was, but yeah, like the cool thing here was not only was a structure, like you said, every week, but also the strategy of, hey, we're going to hit 5 miles at this point. We're going to hit mile 8 at here. We're going to hit mile 11 here, and then you go. And so that was the other part of the other adventures I have you is that all of a sudden there was also a plan for a race. Where in the past it was basically just, I would just go out and run and then hit the wall, So that was really cool just to see. I remember Cowbell, I was supposed to run it with Jason. I was supposed to run it with Sonny. And then I like got stuck in the back, and then it was the national anthem. And then by that time, it was time for the start of the race. Like I was starting with the 10-minute pace group, and it became a catch up, and by the time, like I never saw Sonny, I never saw Jason because they were just too far ahead of me. And that was just my mistake. And I think that was a race that you ended up winning too, but that was a lesson learned, like, hey, like get to the front of the race early, like do your warm up at the front, stuff like that. I just kept learning throughout the years. Go was really fun, and then we can go deeper into Go if you want. But
yeah, what I think is interesting to point out is that, at first you made a huge jump,
right?
And that's like a big piece that whenever you just get structure, people get better. I always say like it's never the coach's success in that moment. It's like when we think about coaching, we think about how can this athlete continue to develop year after year,
right?
Because the first year it's just like give you stuff, get better, keep you healthy, keep you having fun. And so you saw those big jumps. you did get faster every training cycle and with these races, but it wasn't huge jumps, you know, with the Illinois the year. And I know there were, like you said, with Cowbell, there's these little things that you look back on, and you do such a good job, I think, with your science background, being able to analyze things and understand it. But you were so, and you still are so attention, you know, to detail that you know, that was really important to you. So you were progressing, but here we are not progressing, you know, with like 5 minutes every race, 10 minutes every race. And so then coming 2018, the perfect storm. And if you remember, it was supposed to snow that day, which is crazy. It was a late March race. It just fell one of those years where Go St. Louis's course just happened to have a really cold day. And it was funny because I think it was I forget who it was in town, but the Cardinals were playing somebody that day. It was a home opening weekend, I think, because I think we went to the game 2 days before. You took me to the game to opening day, and so it was the Diamondbacks. Right, it was Diamondbacks. Side note: Yachty got kicked out of that game the day of this half marathon. But it was a cold day. It was cold down there. But that's good for runners, you know, like, and that's a big piece of it. So it worked out really well for us, and it didn't snow, which was helpful. So Carlos goes out and he runs just out of his mind. And we still disagree about his few seconds he could have had at the finish line. But there are just amazing photos of myself and Sonny on the sideline, you know, behind the fence, basically, you know, going nuts, you know, just cheering you on. And this was when you hit your big PR, you hit the 126 mark. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Oh, totally. And actually, I remember, so that weekend, even leading up to it, there was a chance that the race was not even going to happen, right? Because it would be so cold, it was going to be snowing, you know, so it was a lot of up in the air. But that cycle, like, there's cycles where you struggle with it, you know, there's a lot of injuries. Those 6 months from January to April, you just knew that the PR was going to come. You know, it was going to be a big race. That was a really good cycle with Jason. It was a really good cycle with Sonny. Unfortunately, Sonny got hurt, you know, couldn't race that day. But I remember I got into the box with both I'm blanking on their names. The two Fishers.
It was,
you know,
it was John Fisher and Eric Fisher.
Yeah, John and Eric. You know, and I remember I got into the box. I got next to Eric, and it was one of those you could feel in the air. You know, it was like 30-degree weather. It's cloudy. There was no wind. You know, it was going to be a perfect day for a race. You know, and we went out. Eric went away, you know. Eric, I think, running a 123 that day. I was like, I'm not going to catch that guy. I had John in my view, like the entire race. Like, there's my line. You know, if I can stay with John, I can hit the PR. And then the other part of it was there was going to be my last race in St. Louis. You know, so it also had the special like feeling of this is the end of an era here. You know, I'm going to move on to like actually getting a job, finishing school. So that was also that component, that emotion of, let me enjoy St. Louis for one last run, you know. The race itself, I remember looking down like at mile 6, I was like, I've never run this fast in my life. You know, I forget the split exactly, but it was under 42 minutes. I was like, this is going too fast, you know, and then that's where the legs started hurting a little bit. And I remember we're coming out the Budweiser into Soulard. That's why the Budweiser Brewery, and we're coming into Soulard up this hill, and all of a sudden I saw the Big River running group, you know, and I saw Tony Hilking. And he was looking at me and was like, you look great. Like, keep going. And that was the push I needed, you know, because then the next 6 miles got a lot easier because I was like, great, actually, I belong here. You know, I actually have it in my legs to go hunt down that 130. And then like I said, like I'm a science guy. So I started doing the math. I was like, oh, it's in the bag already. Now how far can we push it? Yeah. And I don't know if I ever told you, I don't think I told you this before the race, but the plan was to race 12 miles. And then enjoy the last mile. Again, that's like closer to my time in St. Louis. And that was basically what happened. Like, I got to 12. I did the math. Like, oh, it's in the bag and it's a huge PR today. Let's enjoy this last mile and just like appreciate what's happened. You know, we're starting from, I think my first go was a 2 hour and 7 seconds. You know, and just to see the progression to what ended up being a 33-minute PR is like, absolutely, I'll take this. I'll appreciate it. And then the funny part was I get to the finish line and I see Sonny and you. You know, we all get super excited, super like exuberant. I keep running because I do have to finish the race at some point, you know. And then if you go watch the video from like the official video from Go, you can actually see yourself, Mark, like sprinting down the side to go congratulate, because it was like huge PR. We all got super excited. And that was the race. I ran, like, official time is 1:27 and 2 seconds, and I still think like you're still mad about those 2 seconds.
Oh yeah, because I keep saying it was a 1:26 because it should be.
It should be, but it was a 1:27.02 just because like I did cut back a little bit, but at the end of the day, like the goal was there, which it was 1:30, like a sub 1:30. Then we demolished that cycle. Yeah. So
He spent a little time kissing the babies, shaking some hands, and he met it.
I mean, that day, like the race ended on the river right by the arch, so it was a great way to end.
So cool.
It was like my timings in those was very rewarding, and that was like finishing with that race. I could not ask for anything better.
Yeah, it was the perfect kind of stamp on your time in St. Louis, and just summing up how hard you worked. And Ghost course wasn't the fastest course, to pick for that race, but you wanted to do it in town. You'd spent so many months traveling to places for interviews and things like that. I just remember that was a really hectic time for you.
Right.
A lot of plane rides and a lot of commitments beyond the sport. So for you to be able to pull that together was just incredible. So that kind of takes us to the journey where we've had kind of our next phase of life. And Carlos ended up moving to San Francisco. We were very sad to lose him, but we knew that this was a very good thing for him. Obviously, got his PhD here at WashU. Sonny and I went to his dissertation, and we didn't understand anything going on, but we did get really excited. Yeah. And one little side note, there were 2 people in his in like the ceremony on their computers the whole time, and Sonny and I were like, why are they on their computers? Like, we were so mad, even though we didn't understand it. And we were like about to say something. We're like, this is so rude. Like, we're not on our phones. And then afterwards, Carlos tells us, those are the people who are judging me. They're grading me. They're deciding if I graduate or not. Yeah. But Carlos goes on San Francisco. And I think the most important part of this story is that he finds a running club and he finds his wife. Can you share a little bit more just about the experience of how the San Francisco running community has embraced you, and now that you are on this next phase? I mean, you've reached the pinnacle. You found the wife, you found the kid.
Absolutely, and so actually, like, this is something also I owe it to you. Because I remember from when we first started working together, you're like, you need to join a club. It's like, great, like, go to Big River, start with Big River, and like I had a great time with them. Ended up being a pace group leader with them, and then the moment I moved to San Francisco, it was the same thing. All right, I need a club. So at first I was living in a hotel in South San Francisco by my office, and I couldn't really move around. I didn't have a car, so it's kind of hard to go find a club. I finally get a car. First weekend, I'm gonna go try this club that's called the San Francisco Roadrunners, and we claim that we're the biggest group in San Francisco. It's a very social club. Similar vibes to what you guys have now in St. Louis, with Spewak Training, where everyone is super friendly. Everyone is there with, like, they're competitive, but they're all looking out for each other. So get my car, go down there. First run was actually beautiful. It was right by the Golden Gate Bridge. We ran over the bridge and back into the Presidio, which is this huge forest in the city. Beautiful run, and so I immediately convinced, I found my home. This is going to be my club. I'm set, and I remember I came back from the run and they kept telling me the coach went to Notre Dame, which is where I did my undergrad, so I finish off, I go find this coach, John Brust, introduce myself. Hey, I'm new here. I've been here for 4 weeks. Hi, so, oh, great. Like, where'd you go to school? I went to Notre Dame. This awesome. I went to Notre Dame too. There's another girl here from Notre Dame. Like, great. Like, here, let me go introduce you to her. It's like, oh my God. All right, cool. Yeah, sure. Like, this was during the World Cup. I was trying to get out of there so I could go watch the World Cup game, so we go over, we like finally find this girl, and John's like, hey, Carlos, this is Margaret, this is Carlos. And then he just leaves us, he's like, we start chatting, and it was like, oh, Margaret started asking questions like, hey, who are you? I'm Carlos. Where'd you go to school? I was at WashU, cool. Like, I was Notre Dame too. Cool. Like, I'm new to the city. I'm a runner. I'm Catholic. And the funny part here was that Margaret she already knew all of this because she had just seen me on the apps, and she claims that I was too perfect for her, and that's why she didn't swipe anyway, and so it was just so funny because she had just seen me a couple of days ago, and then all of a sudden I was here, like, in front of her, and so that was the first time I saw her. Interestingly enough, that was on 7/7 or July 7th. Couple of weeks go by, I never see her again. She doesn't show up to any more of the runs. It's one of those, like, where is this girl? You know, next time I saw her was at this church where John Bruss has kept telling us to go to. So I show up to church one day, and I kid you not, Margaret comes in and sits in front of me. I was like, oh, there she is. She's back. She exists, and so mass goes well. Like, I'm like trying to figure out when do I say hi to this person, and like finally it's on a piece, like turns around and it's like deer in the headlights of like, oh shit, like you're here, I'm here, hello, what's going on, hi, hi, hi. And then she disappears again. And then it wasn't until the club's holiday party on 11/11 or November 11th where she's the one that made the move. Like, hey, would you like some dessert? And that's when we started talking. And it was just one of those conversations where I think it lasted like 6 hours. And that was it. I texted my college roommate. I texted him at 2 a.m. Hey, Margaret Dissler, remember the name. It's over. And so, again, like it's funny just to think about like the sport itself, like the PRs have come, but it's gone beyond that. It's the friendships, and now obviously my wife, and then as you mentioned, like we have a baby on the way. And so, and in many ways, I'll say it again, like I owe it to you, because like without like this working relationship that we have, I never joined a run club, and then none of this ever happens.
Well, I'm grateful for that. Yeah. You had an amazing video and piece at our 10-year party as well. Yeah. That was an incredible touch, and but just couldn't be happier for you and Margaret. Just seeing you at a different phase of life, go on to the next phase at San Francisco, and being able to see you live out the dream has just been incredible. And I think that's what's so special about the sport. I think one of the reasons why I wanted you to join a running club, was selfishly as your friend. I wanted you to stay connected to community, and I knew how much your running could continue to flourish if you had other people, because you saw that in St. Louis. So much of that, you had always the ability to run by yourself, but you're a social person like the rest of us. I think that's why we clicked so well. Like you did so well with other people, and I was like, you need to experience this at a high level. And San Francisco obviously was able to provide that. So as we're wrapping up, I think, it's fun to think now, like, we've gone through a lot of our running together. You eventually obviously get to San Francisco. COVID happens just shortly after. That changes the scope of things, but you keep training, you keep working out. We hit CIM, in the marathon. We learn lessons, but you just continue to get fitter. You've had so many success stories, even in San Francisco. I think about the 5K you ran in a Michael Jordan jersey, which you did in St. Louis as well. But that was the crazy Kaiser 5K where you just absolutely dominated out of nowhere. And then later on to obviously, just continue that success. And in this past year, I think what's been really fun about coaching you is that we had a setback. We really dedicated the time to strength training, and I want to give a shout out to your trainer, Emily, because without Emily, we wouldn't be where we are today. So thank you, Emily. But we knew that was going to be the missing piece, because you kind of got to a point where you were able to train consistently, but we would just have these little hiccups. And the big piece probably pointing for both of us was, okay, if we want to keep, making the progress and making the jump, we have to make a commitment to the strength training. And you did so, and now you've run a PR at CIM. Can you just wrap up real quickly telling us a little bit about how this next phase of training that you've had with Emily has led to the success, not just of your PRs, but healthier, happier running?
Absolutely. So for context, like starting in 2020, I had an injury every year up to 25, including like not being able to run CIM because I got hurt the week before CIM 2023. And that was the one that really hurt, because it was like, we had a good cycle, and then to have that taken away again. And that's when you said, like, immediately, like, we need to strength train, and I remember I showed up to Emily on like first week of January of 2024. And she was like, do a push-up. And I was like, please, like, I don't do push-ups. I run a lot, and that was the like the emergency lights going away, like all the sirens, like, dude, like we need to strain, like, there's no future in the sport. There's no future in like carrying a baby. There's no future in like even grandkids without strength training, and so that was a big commitment. And then once that started, like I've been injury free for now 2 years and 2 months, and that was one of the biggest difference makers. I remember like 2025 was like, let's rebuild. And then 24 was the let's rebuild. And then 2025 was, we're going to hit this hard. We're going to run like the most miles I run in my life, which is 2,100 miles. And then we're going to go with advanced workouts, and that was really fun to see. And that was all on the foundation of strength training, where I can do push-ups now, and then I have a lot better, like I can do squats, I can do a lot of these things I was not able to do 2 years ago, and I do owe her a lot to her. And then the other change I also made was let's add the diet here too. Let's cut back on alcohol, let's cut back on the chips, on the fried food, and see what happens. And it was just fascinating just to see like the weight drop immediately. And then like and as you mentioned, that this last marathon cycle was just phenomenal because we just hit every single note, we hit every single workout. And showing up to a CIM, knowing that the PR, obviously nothing's ever guaranteed, but just knowing that like if we have a good day, if nothing like out of the extraordinary happens, we're going to have a big race. And we absolutely did, and that was what I think it was like an 8-minute PR. Absolutely. Again, 30-degree weather, cloudy skies, no wind, very similar to that 2018 like half marathon. And that was a really good, it was almost, and it was also like closer to my like no kids live, because also like we have the baby on the way and like that's going to change a lot of things. But it was a really good way just to close, I guess, the like non-dad chapter of my life.
Well, it's amazing just to see where you are today in comparison to where you were 10 years ago. And you've worked so hard to get to where you're at. This is not a accident while you're still continuing to improve. And I think the most important thing that's come out of your story is that if you want to continue to progress, whether you're a coach and a runner, we both have to we have to be open-minded to changing things as times go. And so we've made a lot of progress together doing a lot of the same things, but we've also done a lot of different things. And It's the commitment of you trusting me and then me trusting you and having that dialogue back and forth that's ultimately led to the success that we've had. And like I said, I can't thank Emily enough because part of it is just finding somebody who you're motivated by that's going to make strength training fun. I think a lot of runners struggle with strength training because they just don't think it's going to be very enjoyable. And you found that way early in the week, every week, to get your butt kicked by her, start your week off with a great speed workout, have that positive thing, and it propels you to, some new heights. And like you said, beyond just running, this is going to make you just a stronger dad, stronger grandparent, healthier human. I'm sure mental health component feels really good to feel stronger too. So it's incredible. Well, thank you for taking time just to go through memory lane with me and just sharing your amazing feedback. You have such a great way of sharing your story and incredible inspiration. And I know that it's going to be very motivating for people when they hear it. So thanks for being a part of this.
Oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate you having me. And it's great to hang out. We don't get to talk that much anymore.
I know.
So it's great.
We'll do it more. We'll do it more with the screen. And at one of these days, I will make it to San Francisco. One of these days.
Dude, I actually think about that a lot. It's like, where do I take him? Like, do I break him with the hill? Do I break him with the hills here, or do I take him to like sightseeing and like all this stuff?
All I'll say is when I come is don't take it easy on me.
Our famous last words,
Yep. Well, thank you so much, Carlos. We appreciate you, man.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
If people want to follow your journey after this interview and learn more about your next chapter, how can they do so?
So they can find me on Strava. I think Carlos Briseño. It's actually, my profile picture is still from Go of 2018. Right before I think you were the one that took that picture. And then they can also find me on Instagram, I think at CABECA21 or Cowbell21, which is what my high school nickname used to be. And I think I'm also on Facebook, but I'm not active on it anymore.
Love it. Yeah. Thank you so much, Carlos. That was so much fun, just getting the opportunity to talk with Carlos again and being able to see, just what we've been able to accomplish in those last 10 years. And it really wouldn't be for, without his dedication and discipline to the sport and his passion for just continuing all these years. And I'm just so happy for him and Margaret welcoming a baby here soon. They are just living out their dream in San Francisco, and we just couldn't be happier for them. So as always, if you would leave a review, we would so greatly appreciate it. And please share this episode with as many people as you can, trying to get these amazing stories out to inspire more runners in our community. So thank you so much for listening to the Spewak Training Podcast. And I hope that you guys are as excited as I am, because we got more on the way here in the coming weeks.